What's up, guys? Welcome in GC Live. Chris Clark is here. Wes Mitchell is here. Alyssa Lang will be here momentarily. As Justin says on YouTube, we are running slightly late because I am chowing down on Primal Gourmet. Chris is wearing his Dead Soxy socks, and we're also asking Clint Hammond about a mortgage. That about sums up every single GC Live show. I guess we can go now, man. No point to actually do a show. We got all three of those in. Appreciate that, Justin. Travis says we had to mix in a water as well. Everything on brand from the chat so far. Welcome in GC Live. Of course, we'll be joined actually in about 12 minutes by Alyssa Lang. She, of course, was on the sidelines for South Carolina's massive win over Florida. Alyssa, of course, with the SEC Network now, a former Gamecock Central alum, a former University of South Carolina student and graduate. So, perfect time to get Alyssa on, share some insights from the win on Saturday and just kind of to catch up with her and see what's been going on. And, of course, we're going to be talking about Beamer's press conference today, talking a little bit about Missouri, as he does every Tuesday. Chris, what's up, man?
Man, it's a good day. It's been a busy day. We were just talking right before we came on the show. Tons of content right now on GamecockCentral.com. If you're not familiar, that is, of course, our website. We do have a website. GC Live is a program. We work with GamecockCentral.com. Tons of stuff. Women's basketball, men's basketball, recruiting for basketball. Gamecock Frank Martin just picks up a commitment. Basketball tipping off, football recruiting, tons of stuff going on. So it's been an exciting week, a busy week. Looking forward to talking to Alyssa and continuing to break things down in the aftermath of Florida and, of course, leading up to the Missouri game, because we just heard, to add to the busyness, from Shane Beamer a little while ago.
Yeah, and by the way, Chris, I promised everybody yesterday that we would talk some football recruiting today.
Yeah.
So after Alyssa comes on, help me remember, we've got to talk about the commitment of Demetrius Watson and some of the other things going on this past Saturday, recruits that were in town, some decently newsworthy type stuff we need to talk about from that. So I don't want to forget that. As you said, man, it's there's a lot going on today. South Carolina women's basketball, 5 p.m. tip off. I want to make sure I get all these things correct. Women are at 5 o'clock. That game is on ESPN, also on 107.5. They're, this schedule, man. Dawn Staley has put together one of the toughest schedules probably of all time on paper. They open up with number 5 NC State at NC State. So you get right into it, get right into a battle. No real easing in there as far as the schedule goes. So that's on ESPN. Then at 7 o'clock, you have South Carolina men's basketball team facing USC Upstate at Colonial Life Arena. That is streaming only SEC Network Plus. You can watch it there, or you can just go on over to Colonial Life and watch the game yourself. And other news, I want to make sure we get all the actual news out first. As you said, South Carolina men's basketball adding a commitment today from a class of 2022 prospect. That is wing Daniel Hankins Sanford, someone that I believe South Carolina was expected to get, but he makes it official and then will sign with South Carolina during the early signing period, which is coming up later this week. 21.4 points, 9.9 rebounds, and 2 blocks a game last season for Chambers High School, which is in the Charlotte area. So Frank Martin adds a commitment and will tip off the season later on tonight. By the way, Shane Beamer, did you notice he started his press conference giving shout-outs to Dawn Staley and to Frank Martin? And you know what? This is a very small, probably stupid thing, but I appreciated the football coach using the correct terminology and saying that they were about to tip off their season.
Yes.
Small thing, but attention to detail was there. A lot of people will say, they're about to kick off their season when they're talking about basketball. So the football coach saying they're about to tip off certainly seems like Frank Martin and Dawn Staley both have a strong working relationship with Shane Beamer, and they always try to show love to each other. So that was cool. So the actual press conference today, Chris, let's dive into that. Then we'll see what Alyssa has going on, and then we'll hit recruiting after she finishes her segment. So any takeaways from this press conference today?
Well, I don't think there was anything super newsworthy, Wes. I mean, a couple smaller things. Jason Brown's going to be the starter. We all kind of knew that, even though Beamer had not like explicitly doubled down or whatever the terminology would be for it. He did outline that. Jalen Brooks still not back with the team. Beamer said that he's hopeful that they'll get him back, but he will not be with the team for the Missouri game. Nothing that I caught that was super newsworthy. Something he did say about Missouri that I wanted to hit on, and I'm sure we'll continue throughout the week, kind of going a lot more in depth on Missouri as a team. Wes, later this week, we'll have Gabe DeArmond, PowerMizzou.com. He'll be on with us. I'm going to be on his show this week as well, talking Gamecocks in Missouri. Shane Beamer mentioning that Missouri is playing better. Now, some people may roll their eyes at that, right? What was it, 43-6, I think, against Georgia this weekend. They actually got up early, 3-0. After, I think, on their second drive, they got a field goal. Georgia storms back. They win. And so you look at that scoreline, 43-6. You look at what Missouri's done this year, and you kind of maybe roll your eyes at that. Don't know that that was coach speak as much in this instance, because I'll tell you, I watched some of the Georgia-Missouri game today. Georgia did not have success running the football. Zamir White averaged 1.8 yards a carry. James Cook had 9 carries. He didn't fare very well. A lot of the up the middle runs did not work out well. So intriguing storyline there that I want to dive in the rest of this week. South Carolina coming off their best rushing performance of the year by far. That'll be critical against Missouri, who's really struggled with the run all year. They actually played a lot better in that facet on Saturday. So that one wasn't really a newsworthy item from Shane Beamer, but it did kind of spark that in my mind to go back and look at that a little bit.
Yeah, man. And I think, as you said, news-wise, Jason Brown officially named a starter. They released the depth chart earlier today. Beamer confirmed, yes, he's the starter. We all knew he was going to be the starter, but now it's, I guess, officially official. So my takeaway, man, first of all, we learned today the team had a team-only meeting last week. Marshawn Lloyd letting that information out there during the player media availability today. And then, to me, man, I think, with every first-year head coach, there are almost steps to this. Like, his first press conference, his first offseason, first spring practice, first summer as far as, recruiting goes and camps and all that. There's all these little milestones where a coach tackles something for the first time. And to me, as someone who has grown up in the state of South Carolina and has been alive for 35 years now, I have consistently watched the University of South Carolina football teams at times not be able to handle success. So to me, we all, and I'll put myself completely, as I said yesterday, in the homer category. I love talking with the Carolina fan base when Carolina has good things going on, right? So, I look, and we all have had a blast the last 48, 72, whatever hours it is when you're hearing this, watching this, whatever. Now, Beamer has what I will say might be actually his toughest test so far since he got the job at South Carolina. Can you ground these guys back to work? Because here's the thing, man. If we as a collective, like everybody involved, everybody around this program, people get fired up when South Carolina loses. People get very fired up when South Carolina wins. Look no further than the best video on the internet yesterday, which, if we have time, I think we need to do a full synopsis of a complete review of the Josh Van video that the South Carolina creative media team put together. Unbelievable. So if you haven't watched that, I don't know what rock you're living under. Go check it out on the Gamecock football Twitter. Hilarious, right? Stuff like that, amazing, well done. the level of petty, like the level of just putting Florida's like face down into the dirt after beating them, incredible. That said, everybody around the program, but really everybody in the program, has to ignore the noise and not get too caught up, because this game Saturday is a toss up. Like, it is absolutely a toss up. Some people are going to go ahead and say, well, Missouri's not very good. South Carolina just beat Florida. I expect the Gamecocks to win. That's what some people are going to say. They're going to say South Carolina should win. No. South Carolina has to go play very well, continue to not turn the football over, continue to not make penalties, which they avoided penalties to as well as they have all year long on Saturday. Otherwise, everyone will get dragged directly back down to earth in this fan base.
Yeah, exactly. We're a week removed away, basically, Wes, from us talking about how South Carolina was not going to be favored on the road against Missouri. Then you come out, you have a strong performance against Florida, and the narrative flips some. And that was such a key win to be able to show what this team is capable of doing. Now, here's the thing. They have not shown that in the other games of the year. So we know that there's been two sides of this team this year, and the not so good side we've seen more of, right? So it could be that, very well be that this team has figured something out, that has clicked, that they've turned the corner. We know that this team offensively is capable of playing better than what they have, and we saw some of that Saturday. But if they don't play well, this isn't a game that they're going to be able to just go sleepwalk through and win it. You're exactly right. So Missouri, look, they have struggled. There's no doubt about it. They've struggled, especially on defense. Their quarterback, Connor Bazelak, still injured. Eli Drinkwitz spoke today. Still don't know if he's going to be able to play this week. He said they'll know later in the week. Maybe today they're going to get a little bit of a better sense, but they played two quarterbacks last week. There are some issues. Can South Carolina take advantage of those things? They are going to have to go and play well and kind of build on that performance from last week in order to do that.
All right, y'all. Let's go on out now. We got our special guest joining us down there. Alyssa, give me a thumbs up if you're ready. You look 2 thumbs up. Alyssa is ready, joining us here on GC Live. Alyssa, welcome in. Thanks for taking the time again. You know, when we had you on last time, we pulled you up and you were very much on brand, cramming your lunch in your face.
I remember that now. Yeah, not my finest moment.
Well, no, but you've sort of you've built this very, I would say, awesome brand of adding football and food with your sideline reports, which I think everybody enjoys. So what was for lunch today? Was it anything special, or was it like a quick just grab it and go?
Yeah, so I utilized DoorDash today. As you can tell, I'm very much in like my midday mode right now. I'm going to get ready to go into the SEC Network studio for our evening show tonight, but I got off of my radio show this morning, was starving, DoorDash Chick-fil-A, started getting ready for the TV shows tonight. And the food thing has become a lot of fun this season. Honestly, I enjoy it. I think that's one of the things that make the SEC so special, is that everywhere you go, every fan base is like, oh my gosh, make sure you go to such and such place on the square. Make sure you go here. You have to get a burger here. So our broadcast crew loves to just throw ourselves into whatever fan base we're visiting that week. And I've gotten to do that twice at South Carolina now, which has been fun, but it's also been a lot of pressure, because my crew expects, since I lived in Columbia, that I pick like the best of the best place, like without a doubt. And I feel like I've done pretty well so far, but it is kind of a lot of pressure.
So you had Village last week, Andy's before. All right. Mm-hmm. What were does the crew also get the food that you try? Like, you make the suggestions, they also get some? Right?
Yes. So we usually start workshopping it early in the week, depending on where we're at. And we really end up rotating, taking turns, finding a place, picking a place, unless someone already knows of a place that they're swearing by, which is typically how it works when we go to Columbia. So I think I walked into Village at like 4:30, picked up 3 12-inch pizzas and carried them up to the broadcast booth. And everyone on the crew was like, oh, you're only going to eat a slice of that on the broadcast, right? Like, we can eat some of this before the broadcast tips off. So we do end up sharing. When we were in Nashville, we got Five Daughters Donuts, which is also very famous. And so, of course, I couldn't just get 3 donuts for Taylor Stinch and myself. Had to have to share the love, make sure the crew behind the scenes are happy, because they're the ones making the magic happen. Can't make them upset.
Definitely. That is a veteran move. And Alyssa, I know that deep down, we're in this whole media thing. We all have to keep it neutral. I know deep down you enjoyed being on the sideline on Saturday. What was it like just to sort of, I mean, we all know that this team, they've been through some stuff the last few years, and not a lot of moments for the South Carolina football program like they got to experience on Saturday. What did you witness just watching the guys enjoy it? I know you talked to Coach Beamer right after the game. His kids are all running up to him, hugging him. His dad, Frank Beamer, is like all smiles. Give us a little insight. What was it like to be on the sideline and watch these guys experience that on Saturday?
It was pretty unbelievable, honestly. And, I of course, have a connection to this university and this city, which makes it more special, but in a way that I'm just happy for the fans. I knew I was getting this assignment about a week ahead of time. And I had some people who live in Columbia and were going to be at the game reach out to me and say, I don't know, I have a bad feeling that it might be empty in there and it might be quiet and hopefully people turn up. And when we walked out onto the field and I looked up into the stands, I was like, okay, yeah, Gamecock fans, they turned out. It's been a tough season, but they turned out. And as the game progressed, I've done a couple of games over the last couple of years at Williams-Brice, but I can't remember the last time that I looked up and was like, man, this place is out of its mind, like losing it. It's been, for me at least, years since I've experienced that personally. So I know it sounds cliche, but as a broadcaster, it doesn't really matter where you are when you witness a team that's gone through so much adversity finally have that breakthrough, and the guys are finally getting to see the hard work pay off, and the fans are finally having something to cheer for. We saw it really up close and personal with Arkansas in 2019. My crew did 4 Arkansas games that year, including a Western Kentucky game where Western Kentucky visited Fayetteville, and I ended up interviewing the Western Kentucky head coach after the game because they beat Arkansas, and it was just the saddest trip always to go there and see these Razorback fans who are like, who knows, we're probably going to lose today, and look at them now. So it kind of gives you hope for South Carolina and what Shane Beamer is building already in this first year. Being down there and watching the guys' reactions to it, the way they were celebrating, the way they were amped, it's just fun. It's cool. Shane and the coaching staff they do a really good job of giving us a behind the scenes look of the work that goes in and some of the frustrations. And I was talking to you guys after the Troy game. We were on the call for that, and there were so many times where I'm watching like, oh my gosh, what is the O-line doing? Like, what is happening here? And for it to finally get put together in such a way on Saturday night, it's just rewarding. Even if you're not a South Carolina fan, there were Georgia, Tennessee fans across social media who were like, man, that's really special for that football team. And then you mentioned Frank and Cheryl and the whole Beamer family on the field afterwards. I walked up to Frank Beamer and introduced myself, and we talked for a few minutes, and he was in absolutely no rush. He was just standing there kind of looking around and taking it all in and talking to anybody who walked up to him. You could just tell he was so proud of not only what his son had been doing, but the effort of this football team. Because, you can say anything you want about Florida, and that was a team that came in not prepared for that game. And that was evident, but it doesn't matter. In the SEC, you get a win like that, it's a big deal. I could rant for another 5 minutes about it, but it was a really magical night. And I was just really happy for everybody who was in that building. It was awesome.
Yeah, and Alyssa, you talked about Beamer and how you guys kind of get that behind the scenes leading up to each game. What have you observed, and you don't have to, throw any other SEC coaches under the bus, but what have you observed with Beamer with either the way he conducts himself in those media settings, the access he gives y'all, and just how he does things in general compared to maybe some of the others that you've seen across the conference?
Yeah, I think one thing about Shane that jumped out to me early on, even from the moment he was introduced and the first time I got to meet him, he's just so honest and he's so genuine. And I know those words have been used so many times to describe Coach Beamer, but it's true. And like I said, we had that Troy game a few weeks ago, and one of the players who I got to talk to leading up to the game, just gathering stories and gathering notes, was JJ Enigbare. And he told me, when the coaching staff turned over, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go somewhere else, if I wanted to stay. I kind of just sat there and marinated in it. And I really wanted to see if Coach Beamer was the same guy when he got to Columbia, a month later when the dust settled. And he said there were even times where he sort of tried to put Coach in a situation or ask Coach a question and maybe see if he could rile him up a little bit, or maybe see, if he wasn't the same guy as he is in front of us and in front of the cameras and in front of the team. And he said he's always been consistent. He's always been that same guy. And he said as soon as he realized that, this was a guy that I wanted to play for. And I think that summarizes it perfectly. Coach Beamer has been the same with us in person as he has when I've done kicking field goal shoots with Parker White, and he's bombed the shoot and he's given me grief about my kicking skills, to, when we catch up with the coach 30 minutes to kick and see if there's any last minute scratches or anything like that. He's just always got that same high energy demeanor. He's like, he feels like a Ted Lasso to me, honestly. And it resonates. You can tell. The best part for me, not the best part, one of the best parts of Saturday night was I had just gotten done telling a story that Josh Van had told me last week about Shane and his energy level. And he said, Coach gets so fired up on the sidelines sometimes. He said a couple weeks ago, I don't even know if I made a play or if I was even on the field or whatever it was, but we take a timeout, come over to the huddle, and he goes, and Coach just punches me square in the chest. And I'm like, buddy, that was hard. And he said, it kind of knocked the wind out of me for a second. It hurt a little bit. I had teammates coming over saying, are you okay, man? And Josh was like, it hyped me up so much, but at the same time, it's like, this is a lot of energy. You got a lot of energy. And right when I got done telling that story was when Jason Brown made one of those incredible throws down the sideline to Josh Van. And then Shane walks over and, starts beating on him again. So another great example of just the kind of guy he is, how passionate he is. And if you don't believe it from the players, you can see it, like you said, Wes, when his whole family comes over and jumps on him and they're so excited, and Frank Beamer's ear to ear. Like, how can you not love it? It's incredible.
Yeah, that was perfect timing for that story, by the way. I caught that on the replay that Beamer, he's over there shoving him right after y'all told that story.
Yeah, I meant for that to happen. I knew it was going to happen.
Definitely. I know you got to go soon, Alyssa. You'll have a production meeting, but tell us, I guess, as far as the reaction from your SEC network colleagues. I know we hear all what's going on locally. So obviously some of the reaction was going to be about Florida and, where they're headed right now. That's a completely different story. But what was the reaction from sort of a conference-wide standpoint about what this win meant for Beamer and this program moving forward?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because Gene Chizik actually texted me last night, and he said, we're always ships in the night passing with our shows. He's there on weekends and I'm at games, and he texted me and he was like, man, I'm so glad you got to be there for that. I'm so glad for Shane. It's finally coming. It feels so exciting to be in Columbia right now. And I think that's sort of the epitome of how everyone feels. You see everything that Coach Beamer talks about and everything that the staff talks about. And you see the clips from the players saying that, we got all the energy in the world. It's just a matter of putting it together, and it's a matter of executing in it. It's a matter of not taking it all the way down to the last 3 minutes against Vanderbilt if we can help it. And I think just seeing that come together, like I said at the beginning, if you're a South Carolina fan, if you're not a South Carolina fan, if you're a college football fan, seeing a team that's gone through so much change and through so much adversity and has so much work to do still, be able to grab a win like that at home in front of their fans and do it in just the high energy, high competitive way that they did, it was something to watch. And that was something that Chiz said on the Saturday night show. on SEC Network. He said, top to bottom, no one expected this to happen. You look at Florida's roster, you look at South Carolina's roster, everyone was picking Florida to win that football game. Even South Carolina fans were picking Florida to win that football game, but they out-energied, they out-hearted, if that's a word, they out everything that Florida Gator team. And that just points you back to exactly what Coach Beamer and this staff have been able to do, because you're sitting at 4-4 with guys who are beat up, guys who are exhausted, guys who had very little success offensively against Texas A&M 2 weeks earlier. To be able to send them out there and play the way they did on Saturday night is something really, really impressive. And I think everybody saw that, and they've seen it for a while. It was just a matter of time until it kind of came to fruition, and it finally did.
It definitely did. Alyssa, great stuff as always. I appreciate you making the time. Remind everybody, I know, you got the radio show, you got the TV show, you got the sideline gig. Where all can they hear you and see you and when? And tell them about everything you got going on real quick.
Well, I feel like people hear and see me too much sometimes. Like, I kind of feel bad, but I'll take it as long as they keep putting me on. We are on SEC Network for SEC Now every Tuesday night. So with basketball starting tonight, actually, we'll be on a little bit later, but we'll start with our basketball coverage tonight, and then we'll have an hour of SEC football somewhere around 11:30 tonight. And then I do Sirius XM, our SEC show, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Out of Pocket is on Wednesday. I'm working on some Gamecock guests, hopefully, fingers crossed, for this week, because they certainly deserve it. I was upset that we didn't get Jason Brown's Waterboy impression into the broadcast. We were trying, but there just wasn't exactly a good time for it. So you'll see that on Out of Pocket tomorrow. And then, of course, games on Saturday. So 'tis the season. We love it.
No doubt. Alyssa, we appreciate you as always. Great work as always. And we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, guys.
Yep, that's Alyssa Lang. Check her out all over the place on SEC Network, on all the shows, and good insight from Alyssa, as always. Appreciate her taking the time. We'll have to do that again. She had a production meeting at 2:30, so she was fitting us in with everything else she had going on, but appreciate her taking the time. And cool insight, Chris, just on, I mean, and they did a great job, not just her, but the whole crew, I thought, of capturing kind of what was going on at the end of that game, and what it meant for South Carolina and for the program and for Shane Beamer. I mean, we talked about it yesterday. I don't know if you can overstate sort of just how needed and how rewarding, I'm sure, that night was for guys that had been, putting in the extra work. Beamer talked about it, and I know some people probably even roll their eyes when Beamer says, hey, after that A&M loss, the guys wanted to practice even more. Or, hey, we had a great day of practice on Sunday after the A&M loss. There were, I'm sure, people rolling their eyes saying, we don't care, coach, play better. Like that. I guarantee that was a reaction from some people. But for that to sometimes, like, you can keep beating the table, you can keep being positive, you can keep pushing. Sometimes you just need that reward to come through, and for guys to see a tangible result. So, I thought they captured that really, really well on Saturday.
Yeah, they did. And the result is important at some point. You go into the year, everything, we talked about this a lot before the season, like everything was so positive. We said, hey, this team's going to run into some adversity. They're going to lose a game. They're going to lose games this year, given the schedule, given where they're at. And how they respond is going to be, key to that. So, Wes, there have been things that whatever you think of the record, kind of throw that out the window. There have been things about this team that we've been surprised by. There are things that have been better than we thought. There are things that have been worse than we thought. Things that have been kind of on point maybe to what we thought they would be. I think when you look at this team, something that does stand out is that even if it's within the games themselves where the team has, frankly, first quarter, first half, they're on their way to getting blown out of the building, Tennessee, A&M, they keep playing harder in those games. And the score was ugly in both of them, but they continue playing. And that kind of says something, because in order to get better, in order to end up making progress to improve your record, to stay on the course, on the right path, you can't give up on what you're doing. You have to tweak some things, but you have to keep your guys engaged. And Beamer has done that. He's kept things very positive. He's kept the guys engaged. He's kept them involved in the games to where you haven't ever looked at a game this year and said, the guys have quit. They haven't had good effort. They haven't had good energy. Those things have been in place. It's been other things that have been a problem. When you start having the effort, the energy problems, then you've got big issues that are going to be way harder to correct. You go into Florida, they come out against a Florida team that came in with the same record, that has had some issues themselves, and Alyssa pointed it out and went more in detail on it. South Carolina's sideline was the one that wanted to be there, that acted like they wanted to be there, that was hyped up, that was playing with more energy, with more effort, with more heart, and it showed. Then they get that result. Now that's something that you can go build on because it creates that belief in guys that, hey, what we have been doing, the work we've been putting in, it is going to pay off, or it's possible that it does pay off.
Definitely, man. We're going to get to some recruiting here in a second. I didn't tell everybody at the beginning of the show about our presenting sponsor. He is Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network. The NMLS number is 71597. Email address is the letter C. That's chammond@mortgagenetwork.com. Give Clint a shout, 803-576-4450, or just head on over to clinthammond.com if you're in the market for a new home, or if you just want to see what options are out there for you to save yourself some money on a refinance. Clint is your guy, and he will walk you through that process and make it extremely easy. Chris, again, there's been so much to unpack this week that we did not get to recruiting and sort of what Saturday meant. Beamer talked about this during the press conference today, and you could even – he was sort of even maybe hesitating for a moment, I felt like, to parse his words correctly. And then he sort of just said, I think, like, screw it, I'm just going to say exactly what I'm thinking. I don't know if you caught this part, but he was like, there were some guys that maybe didn't return the text, didn't return the call, didn't return the DM, whatever it may be. And then you get a win like that. And it goes to show you, even a 4-4 at the time Florida team, it means something if you beat the Florida Gators. It means something when you win a game by 23 points that you were supposed to lose by almost 21 points. And this is the type thing, Chris, I'll go back to the beginning of the season when we're all going into the year. What were we saying at the time? We were saying South Carolina to have like a successful build off of it type season, find a way to get to a bowl, and find a way to have a signature win. And I'll be honest, I was starting to wonder if the signature win was coming.
Or the bowl.
Or the bowl. Yeah, to be completely honest. I was starting to wonder. And part of that, Chris, was because even the Dubs at the time were, a win over Eastern Illinois, win over Troy, and a squeaker against Vandy. So you start to wonder. And to me, there's no level of sales job or recruiting job or, hey, man, we'd love to have you. There's no words that can replace what South Carolina did on the field on Saturday, because I think recruits and their parents, they understand this is a rebuild right now. They understand that you're trying to push the program forward. They understand the results aren't going to be there on the field yet, but they also want to see some signs of tangible progress as well. And now South Carolina, with prospects who were there, that's great if they were there for the game, obviously. Mm-hmm. Even for guys who weren't there, they no doubt heard about Carolina winning this game. That's the type thing that can't be bought. It can't be recreated. It can't be manufactured. It just has to happen. You have to do it on the field. And I think we're going to see, I don't know if we'll be able to pinpoint exactly which guys this has a specific, I would say result with. But I can tell you, Emory Floyd is probably one of them. And but I think beyond that, this was just a massive week for South Carolina as far as the on the field spilling over to the recruiting side.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people's questions would be, well, okay, who? Like you hit on a good point there. Who? Which ones? It's kind of like when, in some ways, when the indoor facility opened, right? You got this big, $40-50 million building, not the indoor facility, the long operations center. And the first reaction a lot of people had, okay, time for the recruits to get here, and it's like, no, this is a piece of it, right? This is something that you need to keep up. This is something that maybe it helps lure a guy to campus. Maybe it's something you can point to and say, hey, come check this out. Marshawn Lloyd, good example of that. You get him there, he's blown away by it. You keep recruiting him, you eventually land him, right? You have a pandemic that wipes out a year or whatever it was of people being able to come see any of your facilities, right? So similar thing with football field and results, like you're selling hope, you're selling, what your offense is going to be, what your defense is going to be, playing time, academics, all these different things. At some point, it certainly helps your recruiting when, and for certain guys, it's critical. Show a result. You don't have to go, 12-0 in a season, but show a result, show that measure of progress. And how do you do that? Well, the scoreboard, you win games. And so this is a situation where we can point to some individual guys like Emory Floyd, the Gamecock commitment that's been considering a visit to Florida, heavily considering Florida also. But just in a more broad sense, Wes, you walked away from that game feeling like, based on reaction of just prospects in general, whether they were there or not, you kind of walked away from it going, South Carolina didn't have as much juice in recruiting going in. This game seemed to give them a little bit of life, a little bit of a boost in that area in a general sense.
No doubt, man. So let's talk about Floyd specifically as well. He has separately told both of us now that he is locked into South Carolina. Sometimes, there's a little bit of recruit speak there. I call it when guys are taking other visits and they're saying, oh, I'm 100%. You always take it with a grain of salt. But I will say this for Emory, he's been very open about the fact that he was going to visit Florida. He was going to go 3 separate times. He was saying at one point, wasn't hiding the fact that he was going to visit. He's been very open about it. I talked to him for a little while on Sunday. Now he's not even sure if any of those visits will take place. One of them was set for that Samford game that is this week for Florida. He was also planning to be at the Florida State game, and they were trying to get him in for an official after the season. So, I mean, we'll look and see if he makes it to Gainesville this Saturday. I'm sure they'll be trying to get him in. But now, I saw some of the fans on GC were just assuming the kid's going to flip. And even before this game, I said, look, the defensive coordinator at Florida is probably getting canned. And then he did. So, I think that happening plus him being in town for that game, it going the way it did. He's been publicly cheering for South Carolina on his social media, was excited about the win, may not even take that trip. Seems to me like South Carolina has really helped themselves maybe re-solidify the commitment, both in what he's saying and in what his actions are. We'll certainly see if he takes this trip. By the way, for those who keep up with everything else we have going on the GC YouTube, Kendall Smith actually has the second episode of her show that she's been doing with recruits, the Give Me 5, where basically you get a little bit of a glimpse at the kids off the field. Emory's it's already done, but it'll be on there tomorrow on Wednesday if y'all want to go check that out. But Chris, obviously, as one of the most highly rated, highly recruited guys in this commitment class, hanging on to Emory Floyd, big deal for South Carolina on the field, big deal for South Carolina from a perception standpoint as well as a 4-star guy.
Yeah, no doubt. And that was one where the momentum definitely flipped from what it was. Emory had been in communication with some other schools, Georgia, which we've said, we weren't tracking them as much, but Kentucky, Auburn, Florida was the big one to watch. Now, a set of circumstances, one of them being just the game visit. It was just important to get Emory back on campus. So you do that. reconnect in person with the staff. Certainly the atmosphere, the game result, those things helped, right? Then at Florida, you have the defensive coaching change with Ty Grantham, the defensive coordinator, being out west. That's probably not the end of the changes in Gainesville. So now you've got uncertainty there. You feel solidified at South Carolina. Important get, revamping the secondary in terms of adding more talent, adding some more depth, adding some more numbers was obviously a priority in this class. And Floyd is a kid that has pretty significant upside because of his physical tools. And so definitely good, a good step in the right direction in terms of being able to hang on to him and eventually get him officially in this class.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about Demetrius Watson, Chris. Fort Dorchester defensive tackle, class of 2022 prospect, 3-star kid. Really had been leaning to South Carolina for some time. I don't think you can say that this win over Florida, directly made him commit to South Carolina, because I think the Gamecocks have been in really good shape for a long time. I will say this: it did seem like he had not visited Carolina a ton during the season, even if at all. I know it doesn't seem like he'd been on campus in a while. He visited during the summer. South Carolina had been in a solid position. The question had kind of always been when. It sort of felt like, though, that this experience, not just like the game itself, but just being around the program, getting back into town, seeing the feel of things, did maybe kind of push him over the top at least, and put him in a position to go ahead and make the decision. Chris, did you? I mean, who else was in it for him? I mean, it always sort of felt like it was going to be South Carolina in the end.
Yeah, that was the thing. I mean, he had what I think most people would consider a more modest offer list given the circumstances, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, some schools like that. But I think when you look at Demetrius, there are a few factors. Number one, his kid is a senior, right, a 2022 class, but keep in mind that this is the 2022 class. They didn't lose as much time in a relative sense as the 21 class last cycle. They still lost a good bit of recruiting time. So it's not like Watson I don't think he absolutely scoured the Southeast in terms of camps and things like that. Camped to South Carolina, camped some other places. And he plays for a big school in Fort Dorchester. So it's kind of odd to say that he's kind of flown under the radar a little bit, but he kind of has. And so you're right. When he camped at South Carolina this summer, earned an offer, the staff really liked what they saw there with his size and his movement ability. Ever since then, that was kind of the school that you looked at and you went, yeah, I mean, he's probably going to end up there as long as South Carolina will have him. And the staff, tracked him throughout the year. He's had a really nice senior season at Fort D. He's 6'4", 285 or so, and runs pretty well. He actually plays end sometimes in Fort D's scheme, but probably, he's a defensive tackle long-term. So interesting prospect, interesting recruitment here. A little bit more of an under-the-radar guy. But, Wes, I think this is one of those guys, and there's been many of them. We text about them a lot. Normally every Saturday there's somebody, and you look at somebody, on a football field for another team and go, man, that kid could have played at South Carolina. Why is he not on the roster? I think this is a guy that could be one of those. Wes, South Carolina keeps him at home.
Yeah, no doubt, man. For those on the video feed, you can see the highlights right now. Look at this play right here, man. Just a physical kid. Right now checks out. So I talked to Steve LaPrade yesterday, the Fort D head coach and athletic director, and he made no hesitations. Like he's like, this kid will help South Carolina. He mentioned, I'm going to have to go back and double check that this number is correct. He's like, we've put, I think he said 18 defensive linemen in college during his time at this level, I think. So, I mean, he basically was like, this guy, this is just the next in line of our guys who are going to go make an impact. He said, he went as far as saying that Demetrius looks like the kids that South Carolina is having to face each week in SEC play.
Yeah.
And he offered some unique insight. And some people may say this doesn't matter. I thought this was interesting enough to pass along. We know there's a mindset, some of kids these days, maybe a little bit more of a me first attitude from some guys. He said that is the farthest thing from the way this kid carries himself, and basically was like, this is the type of kid you need in your program to build your program around. He said that he actually, they play 5A football at Fort D, very successful program, consistently over the last decade plus, probably longer than that. And he said they don't have to play guys both ways, but I think he meant this past week, very recently, they had 2 guys on the O-line go down and had already just been dealing with some depth issues on the offensive line. And he said that he told Demetrius, buddy, I might need you to play some O-line this week. And said the kid just was like, shook his head, was like, yes, sir. So they go into the game. The 2 guys can't play. They sub him in. At 285 pounds, he played every single snap, offense and defense, in 5A football. And LaPrade said he looked out there. He's like, the kid never came off the field. Like, I mean, from a very literal standpoint, when the defense was coming off to get water, he's like, he was just still in the middle of the field waiting for the next play. Like, he was just like, I don't need water. I'm just here to do my job. And he said, he even told him, and he's like, well, Demetrius, you're not going to be able to wear 90 this week as an offensive lineman. And he's like, some of these kids are like, Coach, that's my number. Like, I got to have my number. They don't want to wear an ugly number. He said the kid was like, all right, Coach, what number do I need to wear? So he just has a very little bit of an old school mindset. And LaPrade was talking about, he's like, I don't remember the last time I've had to, they call that an Ironman game. Like, you play Ironman football where you play both ways. But he said it wasn't just playing both ways. He literally played every meaningful snap on offense and defense. So I thought that was some cool insight into the type of mindset that this kid has.
Well, they've definitely seen a lot of talent come through there. I mean, you think about some of the guys just at all positions, DeCarrion Joyner and John Simpson from Clemson and Byron Maxwell. But, specifically on the D-line, there's been a ton to where I couldn't even come close to naming them all. The biggest ones, Carlos Dunlap. Sorry, Gamecock fans, bring that one up. Robert Quinn. Sorry again. Those are two of your biggest ones, but they've definitely had some talent down there. They play at a high level. And so for LaPrade to have that kind of, he's had some guys, man. They've definitely had some guys down there. I've talked to some other folks around the program who, see Demetrius every day, and they believe that he's having a really good year. And certainly you look at the physical tools and the kind of kid he is, that's someone that you can bring in and develop and turn into a good player.
Yeah, and I think that's one position, the interior line, where you look and, Carolina has they have a good mix right now. You got some older guys there. You got some younger guys that are coming along. Tell you what, man, Boogie Huntley hustles as much as about anybody on that field. I've seen Boogie 40 yards downfield chasing a runner down. So, you got some young guys, and then you have this class coming in, and they add Watson to it. And, dude, I'll tell you what, if I'm South Carolina, and I'm assuming they already have, I'm definitely checking in on my boy Jamari Lyons as well in that Florida class and seeing if there's maybe something cooking there, depending on how much of this Florida staff gets blown up,
Yeah, man. And, I was just talking to somebody down at Florida today, and this kind of thing is hard to know. It might be kind of a moving target, but talking to some folks down there, I kind of asked about, okay, how are things down there? Obviously, you dismiss a couple coaches, your defensive coordinator, your O-line coach, who, by the way, has worked with Dan Mullen like his entire career, just about, John Hevesy. That was kind of an alarming move, one that's been talked about for a while, but nonetheless an alarming move. the vibe that I got back was this is not the end of the changes. Dan Mullen makes a couple changes. We'll see how the rest of the year goes. Maybe that dictates things, but this might be a deal where you see even more changes. And so certainly in recruiting, that's something that may be pointed out for lack of a better term by some opposing staffs. And South Carolina finished, second, probably a pretty close second for Jamari Lyons. Maybe worth another check-in, like you said.
Yeah, and dude, if there are other changes, then if there are more changes on the offensive side, you probably, not that I think he would necessarily flip, probably make a call to CJ Smith, right? The speedster that South Carolina was in on early, probably make a call to Jaden Gibson. Let's see, I'm looking at their class right now. EJ Lightsey, that was a linebacker that South Carolina was in on pretty early. He kind of, they kind of faded with him, honestly. He sort of got his attention on some other schools. The visits that he had talked about taking to South Carolina never really played out. So I don't know, but you probably make the call. You just find out. It never hurts to find out. But the three guys that certainly stand out that you would be looking at from South Carolina's standpoint, and with a defense coordinator already being out, would be Jamari Lyons, and then of course the two receivers, Jaden Gibson, CJ Smith. Maybe they want to take another visit and see if they're interested. It doesn't hurt to ask. So we'll see if South Carolina does that. Otherwise, Chris, I would say it wasn't a list quite on the level of what the Kentucky week was probably the biggest. That's one of the biggest recruiting lists I've seen at South Carolina in a long time, but still a very, very solid list. Montique Rames, the Sumter defensive end, class 2023, 4-star kid. He made it in. Traquan Fagans, Alabama commitment, 4-star kid, 2022 defensive back. He made it in. Let's see. I'm trying to think of some other guys worth mentioning that we talked to. Lenoris Sellers, intriguing visit there. He is committed to Virginia, class of 2023, quarterback from South Florence in South Carolina. Big armed kid, man. That kid can absolutely sling it. No offer yet there for Sellers, but he when I talked to him, he told me that the attention from South Carolina has started to pick up quite a bit. Lawson Lucky, the big tight end from Georgia. At some point, Georgia's going to run out of room to take tight ends as well. So, maybe South Carolina slides in there and can land him. But certainly a nice list to see this signature win for South Carolina.
Yeah, hit on a couple of those guys. Good point on Georgia. And, you kind of look at what they've got on their roster. Oscar Delp, obviously, in the 2022 class. And they already have one 2023 tight end committed to Wes, and Pierce Sperlin out of Florida. So you look at it and, there's an opening. Lawson Lucky's a guy that has some Georgia ties. His dad attended there for a while, played there for a while, did not finish his career there. But, obviously there's a little bit of an angle there for Georgia, but there's an angle there for South Carolina as someone that they offered pretty early. There's a good relationship there. And getting them on campus, I think, was a pretty significant step. So I expect them to be in the game there. Sellers, I'm intrigued by, right? I mean, he's a 23 class guy. We know that South Carolina has targeted pretty hard Dylan Lonergan out of Georgia. But Sellers is someone they saw in camp some this summer at the 7-on-7. He's put up some big numbers in Florence this year. I got to see him play against Irmo and Nickham and Warry Gamecock commitment. And Lenoris Sellers lit up Irmo that night. I think they scored 62 points, 63 points. He can run. He can throw on the run. He's got a live arm. He can throw with touch. Very interesting kid. And I'll be curious to see just not only South Carolina angle, but just if he picks up more traction in general, around the Southeast after this year.
Yeah, talking to him, man, I don't get the sense he's like I feel like even though he committed, that his recruiting process is still in the early stages. I mean, the schools are still kind of finding out about him. I think he hasn't really taken a ton of visits. The South Carolina visit, he told me they don't really plan their visits out too far ahead of time. He's still just sort of working through it. So he took a trip to VT, he took a trip to UVA, and then he was just like, I like UVA, I'm going to commit, and just sort of hopped in. And so he admitted to me, he was like, look, I'm committed to Virginia, and he's happily committed to Virginia. But I think if other schools hop in, we were talking in general, not specifically about South Carolina, but if an in-state school like South Carolina hops in or another big name school, then it sounded like he would take at least an open-minded look at that school. By the way, another intriguing prospect that was in. Have you watched the film of Benjamin Hall yet, Chris? Because you're about to if you haven't. I'm gonna throw it up, but South Carolina in very early here. Kid out of Kennesaw, Georgia, North Cobb. Very first offer for him. I like what I see though, man.
Yeah, he is definitely an interesting kid. Get in early on this guy out of Georgia, plays for a big high school there in Georgia. I think he's having a pretty good year there as well. So first visit for him. You talked to him, Wes. I touched base with him briefly. I know you talked to him, so you'll be able to speak more to the visit. But yeah, there's definitely a lot to like here on the film. Bigger kid who can, run, shows good vision, can dance around a little bit and find the gaps. Intriguing and probably a storyline to watch from what he seemed to tell you.
Yeah, great balance. I feel like he's kind of one of those low center of gravity kids. Runs physically and just a super nice, super polite kid too. Enjoyed talking to him. Like I said with Sellers, very early in this recruiting process, even more so than with Sellers. This was really he and his family's first visit. Pretty much anywhere, it sounded like. Definitely their first real visit to South Carolina. They went to the game on Saturday. They stayed overnight. They did the photo shoot on Sunday, checked out the ops building on Sunday. And, he's not tipping his hand on anything. He literally first offer, but you could tell that the first offer meant something, to a guy who'd obviously been, I'm sure, waiting on that first one to come through. And now I told him that's the snowball effect, though. Once you get an SEC offer, other schools tend to all of a sudden decide to hop in on your recruitment as well. So we'll see if that takes place there. But also, anytime a kid takes the 2-day visit, that's a sign of interest on their part and a sign of interest on South Carolina's part as well. So he may be a guy to keep an eye on at running back for that next class. Right up there with several other guys. Ike Daniels is who I keep coming back to, Chris, as far as, the mutual interest there. Ike being on campus, I think 3 times since June. Montario Hardesty going up there and seeing him in Virginia as well. All the feedback we've both heard as far as how things have gone there and how much he likes South Carolina has been extremely positive. So I would say Benjamin Hall, who we just saw, and Ike Daniels are at least 2 out of a group of guys at that position that you're going to want to remember those names going into 2023 recruiting.
Yeah, Ike Daniels is one where there's, significant early traction. 2 sides seem to really like each other a lot. He camped this summer, back, like you said, back on campus a couple other times. So there are other guys in that 23 class. I think there's, I guess you could say, a short list of backs in this 23 class. And Carolina, of course, still wants to sign one in the 22 class. We'll see where that ends up turning. But Daniels is certainly one out of Virginia to continue to watch, and we will at GamecockCentral.com. Yeah, let's tell the people about Dead Soxy too, as we fixing to close out the show here. Make sure afterwards that you go over to DeadSoxy.com, peruse their full, gallery, their catalog of men's and women's socks, all different colors, all different styles, whether it's athletics or dress socks. Go to DeadSoxy.com, DeadSoxy.com, and use the promo code Cocky to get 25% off your entire order.
Yep, and as you see right there below Chris, you can see our Primal Gourmet hotline, chat line every single day is sponsored by our friends at Primal Gourmet. And Chris, did you pick up your weekly thing yet?
You know it, man. You know it. I did. Good selections this week. You know what? I'm not going to spoil all of them. I'll tell you one of them, so you can be surprised, Wes. And
tell me the one you're most looking forward to.
I think there's a pot roast in there that looks really good. And I'll give it one more way because I already ate it for lunch. There was some sriracha chicken. That was really good. Yep, very intriguing. If you want to find out what is in the rest of it, primalgourmetsc.com. Get on their meal plan. They do delivery, their homebound program, or they deliver to a whole bunch of locations in Columbia, Charleston. You can go check out their actual place over in West Columbia as well. primalgourmetsc.com. Promo code GCOCK20 will get you a discount off of your first order with those guys.
No doubt. We appreciate Primal Gourmet. We appreciate Dead Soxy. We appreciate our buddy Clint Hammond. And we appreciate all of you for joining us on the show each and every day during the season. And we appreciate our buddy Alyssa Lang for hopping on today and spending some time with us and giving us some insight. Great stuff from Alyssa, as always. She so good at her job, so professional. Definitely great when she joins us and gives us some insight. So we appreciate that. We're going to get out of here. Until tomorrow, we'll see you all on GamecockCentral.com, and then we'll talk to you on Wednesday.